Welcome back to Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. One of the most famous events in world history is the 1492 voyage of Italian explorer Christopher Columbus, commissioned by the rulers of the growing Spanish Empire. Most historians allege that Columbus's reasons for embarking on this journey to the Americas were as follows: imperialism, colonialism, glory, God, and gold, and finding a westward passage to Asia to make trade with Europe easier. But there's much more to this story than meets the eye. I'd like to uncover the hidden reason behind Columbus's voyage, a reason that actually has been largely lost to history. I'll begin by showing my hand early with a statement, and then I'll back it up. Columbus was the last medieval Christian crusader. Now let me explain. In the late 15th century, the Ottoman Turks, the most insidious long-term Islamist foe against Christendom during the second millennium, was breaking down the gates of Western Europe. The vegetative Byzantine Empire, already on its deathbed by the time of Columbus's birth, was struck by a death blow by the Ottomans in 1453 when they turned their sights now to the west. At the same time, the Spaniards in the west were furiously driving the last of the Turks from their lands following a whopping 750 years of almost nonstop conflict. In 1492, only months before Columbus set sail on the Atlantic, the Spaniards retook the Iberian Peninsula for Christendom. Now, Columbus, a devout Roman Catholic, was fueled by his faith. Seeing the long-term danger that the Turks posed to his faith and to his country, his intention in traveling westward was primarily driven by the same crusading fire that drove that first generation of Christian princes to free the Holy Land from the Arabic pagans back in 1099. His plan, funded in part by the Crown of Spain, was to outflank the Ottoman Turks. By finding a passage westward to Asia, the Christian nation-states of Western Europe could mobilize a force to surround the Muslims from the east and the west, thus stemming the unceasing tide of Mohammedans into Christian lands. And the end goal would be the defense of Christendom, a recapture of the fallen Byzantine capital of Constantinople, and perhaps even an attempt to take back the Holy Land itself. Now, you have to understand how dire this situation was for Christendom. The Ottoman Empire was massive and it was growing. The Ottomans themselves were ruthless and bloodthirsty, enforcing blood taxes on the Christian citizens of their lands where they would conquer, and they would essentially kidnap Christian boys in Eastern Europe and use them as sex slaves before spiritually mutilating them into expendable soldiers of the Ottoman army. They were also notorious for trafficking hundreds of thousands of Christian women and selling them as sex slaves. Now, for Columbus and the Spanish crown, the fate of Christendom was at stake. History tells us, of course, that Columbus's crusade did not accomplish the goal of defending Christendom from the Ottomans, in large part simply because of the massive continent in between him and the Asian landmass. The Ottomans did come uncomfortably close to penetrating Western Europe until the dramatic Christian victory at the Battle of Vienna in the 1680s, led in large part by the furious charge of the Polish winged hussars. The tide of Islam was finally stopped and the Ottoman Empire fell into obscurity before succumbing to another Western power in the early 20th century, the British Empire. Columbus, the Crusader, for his part, did largely succeed in bringing the banner of Christendom to a pagan land, however, and his efforts helped establish a massive new Christian-ruled region in the Western Hemisphere. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.